Good morning, video games. Welcome to Filthy Casuals, a podcast about video games hosted by three very kind and extremely knowledgeable boys. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Tommy Dassler, and with me, as always,
Ben Vanel here, and we've sent him down to the Game Developers Conference, and he's got all the news that's fit to print. It's roving reporter Adam Knox.
Bad news. I went to GDC, but I typed the wrong one into Google Maps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you know it, I ended up at
The
Let me run through a bunch of G words.
Garfield.
Good
Yep.
Dog Kennel.
Yeah.
They'd misspelled it.
Yeah. Well, that's a bad convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, well, a lot of good kennels there.
Yeah.
The typo was a shame, but
It's good kennels, not good dogs.
a lot of AI-powered kennels
Oh,
these days.
yeah.
You know, they know when the dog's going to come in there. They order the dog's food automatically.
It is more efficient, but it's way less personal.
Oh, it's the dogs are going to be taken over by AI.
Yeah.
And they'll be the batteries, and we'll get away with it.
Okay.
They won't be using us in the batteries. It'll be a dog matrix.
Yep.
Simple to make. Why didn't they just use dogs?
Yeah.
That movie fucking sucks.
Oh, because humans wouldn't, like scientifically, humans wouldn't have worked either.
No, but if you're going to go down the road, all you need to do for a dog matrix is make one field.
Yeah.
And you're fine forever.
Yeah, true.
And you get big dogs. Get a whole bunch of, Irish wolfhounds or whatever.
Sure.
And you've got yourself a fucking matrix.
Why don't you put the dogs in hamster wheels, like dog-sized hamster wheels?
There you go.
Yeah.
Ring, Wachowskis.
But the dog's more likely
Hello?
to be like Joey Pantalone in that film.
What are you talking
It's always going to pick the steak.
Oh,
I want the steak.
Yeah.
What's a Joey Pantalone?
You know, well, who's his
About
character in the
$1.50?
film?
Joe. Well, his name's Joe. His name's Joe Pantoliano.
Oh,
Firstly,
yeah.
Right, okay.
I forgot it because he's on.
his name's not Joe Pantalone.
I follow him
Joey
on.
Pantalone?
I follow him on Instagram, and he's Joey Pants on there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I've seen that so many times that I've just become detached from what his actual name is.
Yeah,
Now
Joey
I understand
Pants.
what's going
But
on.
a dog, given the choice from the agent, the dog's always going to go, "I want the damn steak."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got it set up.
Yeah.
This is an inevitability, and the dog's like, oh.
Speaking of AI, though, like
Please
huge,
let's.
huge debate. You know what I haven't heard it mentioned in relation to is like in enemy that's always been the big
Right,
thing.
that's the one we've already known about.
Yeah, like in a Nintendo 64 game, it was really like that era was when it was really talked about of like you would get a shooting game and it would be like, oh, the enemies really suck. That was the thing that like would elevate a game was like if the enemies seemed a bit more
Half-Life.
realistic.
Right.
Yeah.
The big thing of Half-Life's early chat was the AI in this game is crazy. So we can probably draw it back to there when the dogs all end up in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Well, it's Gordon Freeman's fault.
But yeah, a bit. But you still do.
Ironically.
But games do still come out where people, kind of are off it because of how the enemies react. Like even in something like Last of Us 2, I feel like there were a few points where people, or like companion AI, where the whole the first one is particularly guilty of that, where you're meant to be sneaking around and your companion can just be like jumping up and running around, and it's the enemies aren't detecting it because that would be unfair. But
a lot of Dragon's Dogma 2's stuff is we'll talk about it during this episode, but the AI in that is a big part of why it is such a weirdly put together mess technically.
Right,
my
yeah.
understanding.
I think at this point, because there was a point where it was like, oh, this is revolutionary. You only hear about it when it's bad these days.
The AI stuff.
Yeah.
It's just not ready yet is my impression of it,
Yeah.
is that like it's one of those, and it often happens with tech, and especially when tech overlaps with like dickhead business people, is you get like this thing that's not baked yet coming out of the oven, and people being like, eat these muffins. You're like, it's fucking flour? What's in a muffin?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Flour,
good.
water, sugar.
This is an egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, me and Ben were talking recently about what are the things, what are the the uses for AI that aren't going to take away someone's like creative job.
A couple of podcast lads going to Japan and chatting about AI.
Chatting AI. But yeah, like what are the uses for it that no one is, or people aren't really going to be, not just like, oh, we got it to design this poster or whatever. It's like, well, a person could have like actually made that better. And yeah, in the case of like immersive gameplay and a computer controlled player seeming realistic, that's a great one where like there's a point where human development on that can only go so far. So having it actually be an alive thing within the game.
People have definitely talked about that element of it with like ongoing content too, like automatically generate. And you already get this in games. There are like mods for Skyrim where you can speak to the characters,
right,
and they'll reply to you with some implementation of, I don't know if it's ChatGPT, but one of those language models, so you can have chats with people.
Kramer get iPad.
Yeah, exactly. It's all going on, but it's just that a lot of it is broken enough still at this point that it's not better.
Yeah, that was a story I think we forgot about. It was like maybe dropped the day after last week's pod that Ubisoft put out a big thing, like an official announcement, like we are experimenting with like generative AI replacing dialogue in our games.
Well, there was
everyone hated that.
Yeah, the Prince of Persia game that came out recently, when it launched, there was a character that the voice was AI.
Right.
And I think they were like, oh, that was a placeholder that we forgot to take out. And people were like, was it? That seems like a very weird thing to slip under the radar for such a big studio.
Yeah.
It'll become, as all technology like this sort of does, more and more integrated until we don't think about it anymore. You don't think about like Wi-Fi really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there was a point where it was like, fucking hell, the internet's
Wi-Fi's taken away jobs from the person who comes to your house and connects the cable up.
What happened to the cups with the strings between them?
I mean, that's the thing. People are freaked about it, but people when Siri launched were like, "Oh, here we go. This is the this is the end of everything." And it's like, I'll be driving along and I'll say, "Call, Lauren," and it'll be like, "I don't know who that is." And it's like, okay, it's only my fucking fiance who I communicate with multiple times a day, and the phone still can't get its head around that. So that's been like what, 10 years?
Yeah,
it's that stuff to like. The big negatives about AI that people are scared of are less AI's fault and more where we are in like attitudes towards employment.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've maybe talked about this even where like
the problem is capitalism, not this tool.
Always my answer.
Yeah. You're right. It's like people will use. I mean, people using it to do deep fake stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, that's not the programmer's fault.
Right.
That's the people behind it.
And you still need to regulate tools that can be used to do bad things, but like...
But you need AI control.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I think.
Yeah. But yeah,
rein them in.
I think the Ubisoft position was like, it's going to be more immersive because it'll be more reactive. But it's not going to sound like a human because it's an AI and it's very difficult to make that sound natural. And also, we don't want something that is like rote and repeating, language based on existing stuff.
Then
we want
play a Ubisoft game
already.
Yeah,
but we want a creative writer to make something new.
And it really depends on the type of thing that you're making as well, I suppose. Where there's plenty of stuff where it would just fill in more content for the types of games that could be serviced by that type of thing.
Yeah,
right.
But you can still tell after all this time, you can tell when someone's just clicked a button on a Photoshop filter versus kind of crafted something organically.
Yes.
And those tools have been around forever, but you still, I think that it's like an uncanny valley thing where the brain can pick a person created this versus like, this was a 1 second job.
I really do think it'll get there though. I don't think there's like... Stuff progresses like that, and like there was a point where they're like, well, 40 miles an hour, that's as fast as a steam engine goes. Stuff progresses.
I wonder if people can tell that this episode is AI. We just put a couple of prompts in and then didn't do an episode this week.
There are three main reasons why people won't be able to tell that this is AI. The first reason is, of course, that AI can be generated by a computer.
Fashion report, Adam, I love your sixth finger today. It's looking really beautiful.
Watch me eat this spaghetti. Oh, I turn into spaghetti. Hey, the GDC, the Games Developers Conference was on.
Yes.
We weren't there. I don't know where it is even. But
no,
GDC
me neither.
took place, and there are a few little bits and bobs that came out of that were sort of interesting. A lot of rumor mill shit because it's all, people who work in the same industry and there were protests and stuff there or some sort of demonstration.
This is a nice alignment of
labor union stuff.
People who were forced out of this industry.
Yeah.
This is a nice kind of lineup of Nintendo's next one coming along, Sony's mid-gen one. You know, like we are we are in the thick of it as far as rumors go. You know, a little overlap of all the companies having something coming up.
People's lips were getting a bit loose about a few things that like aren't verified, but are people like taking the temperature of some developer opinions on things. The big ones that I saw were a pretty wide thing of people being like, why are we bothering to fucking make Xbox versions of our games? Because it's a nightmare because we've got to do the Series S and then no one buys them.
Yeah.
So what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
And with the PS5 Pro, like you said, people, and again, this is just opinions from some people who are developers, but going like, what's this for? This doesn't help. What? No one wants this. What are they doing? Which again, we also kind of think, and it does echo Sony's strategy with the PS5 hardware-wise of just, we're putting this thing out. Why?
It's slightly better, but I guess.
Because you've all of a sudden got the X, the S, the Pro, the 5. Maybe you want to still be getting your game to run on the PlayStation 4 is still pretty common now. And then potentially the Switch 2 as well. Like, you've got maybe the most different... If you're like a third party that wants your game to come out on as many platforms as possible, you've got maybe the most different versions that you've got to put together than ever before.
World, like you've always had to optimize for a bunch of different types of things, but you've got these like handheld PCs that are pretty common now.
Yeah, so you got to think about Steam Deck and
get more and more relevant. You know,
you almost, I assume, but like budget wise, you're like, okay, well we do PC and maybe after that do a Steam verified, whatever it's called, certified version,
which I think
or patch or whatever.
Yeah, there's some process that is set, but whatever.
And then like pick a console. Just be like, okay, well PS5, I guess.
Most games during this generation have been, it seems, targeting a PS5 as like this is what we should make the game for, and then iterate from there. Which there's always during each generation one of those, like the PS2 was kind of that, and then the 360 was kind of that, and so on.
Which is also, all of that is kind of at odds with, I think, all the like layoffs and all that dodgy stuff that keeps happening, because these like making a game for all these different platforms, it's like that needs more manpower. That's like different, you need all these like little different ecosystems in the one.
What if it simply needed a clever little computer to
to
get in there and fiddle with it?
It is more likely that, because there are games development companies that just do ports as well. And not even like ports, just like, we'll re-certify this game for another console. Like, you got to assume those contractors are getting a shit ton of work while, full-time employees are getting laid off.
I don't know which pockets of things have been. It seems like it's pretty widespread, and it's a rough time for people in that industry. So again, worth acknowledging there. But some of the positive stuff, I suppose, that we saw from it.
Maybe we could go back to a time when a game coming out on 2 different consoles would just be completely different. Having a completely different version of a game on Xbox and on PlayStation would actually be you actually would have to take a stand and go, the way these ones kind of look and operate, that's the one that appeals to me. The aesthetics and the
console wars are back.
Exactly.
Artificially.
Well, I guess, and we have no money for it, but
that had the 2 different versions of like Splinter Cell games that would be the cross-gen things, but like Call of Duty 3 or whatever would be different on the Xbox to the 360.
All those Disney games across the Mega Drive and the SNES were like literally made by different teams, like completely different companies.
Versions of Crazy Taxi and shit that look fucked and weren't good. But
Tony Hawk 2 on the GBA was fucking really good.
So cool.
That was somehow pulled that
utterly
off.
different.
The isometric one?
Isometric, but it still weirdly felt the same to play.
Right.
I remember it was like a launch game and the reviews being like, I know what you're thinking from looking at this, but this is actually pretty sick.
Nice.
In terms of that sort of, I don't know how much AI is a part of it. And like you say, AI has always been a thing and is just now a tag for a second type of thing, or a more advanced version of it. But they showed off a bunch of Unreal Engine stuff there, which it feels like Unreal Engine 5, they've been gabbing about how good it is for years and years.
The current console gen.
And I don't think that there's been that much stuff that's come out with it. Like I know Fortnite runs on it now or whatever, but like
There was that Matrix demo thing.
yeah,
was Forspoken Unreal 5? Or maybe that was Unreal 4, yeah.
I don't even think that... I think that might have been the weird engine they used for Final Fantasy 15 or something.
Oh, right.
I think that was that.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a bunch of weird shit all over the place. But they're showing Unreal Engine 5 and they showed some demos of, like, here's how easy it is to iterate as a developer on, like, say you've got this big thing in the middle of a path here and you want to move it over there. You just click and drag and it figures it out and puts some stuff in between, and it was pretty impressive looking.
Right.
Obviously within a box of a demo.
Yeah.
But and they've had stuff like that for development tools for ages and ages and ages too.
Yes.
Think about how many times you've seen the logo for Speed Tree.
Yeah.
Not even really thought about it.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
There was like the one thing I saw from this was the like, oh, what's it called? The metahuman. Their character, like human character generation stuff,
Right.
Where it's like now you can like you say, as simple as using a slider to change like bone size and like you can. They're really getting in depth with facial animations and stuff like that, which was previously like, you know, Naughty Dog having to do motion capture and then fucking hone it and tweak it, you know, to the nth degree.
Do you know, weirdly, Unreal Engine has been used maybe more in like Disney productions than in video games. Like all of the backgrounds of so many shows now. I think Dune 2 used Unreal.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like they have those massive screens that can move at the same rate of the camera. And that's part of what they were showing off with a demo here where they had Amy Hennig on the stage as well, who is working on, I think it's a Captain America game specifically.
Right.
But Black Panther was in it too. And they had a guy on the stage holding a camera walking around the stage, and the camera's movements were mapping directly to the game and stuff like that. So you can have directed footage that immediately translates into like how the world is responding.
Right. Yeah, that was Marvel's 1943 Rise of Hydra.
And they showed sort of some tech stuff of that and
God
like a couple of moments of you know, a Captain America speaking and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But that was the like so much of it is, and they're probably making a lot of money from this they definitely are.
Okay.
It's geared towards movie studios as well.
Right.
Because like computer animation tools are very useful in film production these days.
Yeah.
It's that kind of insight that you won't get from anywhere else because they wouldn't bother to fucking say it.
You'd never know we weren't actually there.
It's all cool stuff and it's all very, you know, like, but like I say with the Unreal Engine demos I've been showing for ages, in terms of actually playing games, it doesn't always seem to rapidly translate into, and now you can play something that
But
uses this.
but it's all this stuff too. It's like the leaked specs of the PS5 Pro. It's like who I barely feel like I'm getting the juice out of my base PS5 at this point. All this stuff means nothing if if there's not the games to play on it and the experience isn't fun.
What I've seen as well with people talking about that is like, hey, I don't care as long as it like I'd love to play my games at 60 frames per second again,
Yeah.
which is the part of it that is least likely to happen from what people were saying about the particulars of the specs of the PS5 Pro.
Right, it was more about like rendering, ray tracing better rather than it all being faster.
And a lot of the stuff, like with Dragon's Dogma 2, is CPU bound, which isn't necessarily affected by this.
And also the problem is, they iterate on a console and they go, oh, it's going to be, this much more powerful. And so you kind of think about, oh, well, imagine this game that I'm playing current gen running on that. It would look sharper and it would run smoother. But then, of course, developers aren't just going to go, we'll make that and run it on that hardware and have it run better. They're going to go, well, how much can we really push the hardware and get out of it? So that's kind of ends up being the problem, is that everything that comes out for that hardware does end up running not as good as it could be because they're trying to push the hardware to its absolute limits. That's what like developers want to do.
Right.
So really the best thing to do is like get the new console and be playing your previous gen stuff on that.
Yeah.
Because then it's going to be
for 4 years.
Yeah, because then it's going to be really optimized. But like no developer sits there and goes, great, we can have this run at 4K and 60 frames per second. They're going to go, but if we turn these screws up slightly, we can get this all looking a little better and have
the trailer's
going to
look beautiful.
And people are fine with 30 frames per second anyway. So if we just crank this all up.
You're always going to fill up the bucket that you have and continue to strain whilst lifting it.
Yeah.
Also out of that, I think it's Sven Vinker is how you pronounce his name.
Right.
I think he's the head of Larian Studios, who made Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes.
Larry
Studios. No more fucking Baldur's Gate out of them. They're not going to do any DLC or expansion stuff. They're going to fix up some more patches and things like that, and then they're moving on to something else.
That's fair enough. There was that thing that I don't know where this came from specifically, but there's like more words in the script than all the Lord of the Rings books put together, and the total cutscene runtime across the whole game is longer than Game of Thrones, which obviously you're not. No one player is going to see all of that in one playthrough, but like just what exists in the game is more than anything else basically ever. So I don't think they need to worry about DLC.
Sounds like it would have been one of the toughest games to make as well. And
they made about 10 DLCs as the base experience anyway.
And apparently like they started working on a DLC and everyone just didn't want to do it. And so they kind of went, all right, actually this will just implode our studio.
Yeah.
And when it's been, I mean,
unhappily work on this. So they're going to move on to something else and everyone there is thrilled about it.
Yeah.
Well, DLC started as a thing to stop people from just trading the game in as soon as they were done with it. I
guess so.
And to, because then the game maybe gets sold 3 or 4 times over.
Yeah.
And the studio or the publisher only gets like one sale out of that. So it was to incentivize people to hold on to their copies for longer, which in the case of something like Baldur's Gate, it's like, people are doing multiple playthroughs of it. Their one playthrough has taken them, hundreds of hours potentially. It's not something that needs, like a single player 8 to 10 hour experience. A couple months later, you maybe want a little more juice, but just this idea that like everything just should have something more down the line. Not everything needs it if it's a completely full experience.
Having said that as well, though, like the characters in that game are so good and all of that stuff that I would have loved to have seen more of it.
Yeah.
Like out of any game that gets DLC just as a sort of like, well, you got to do
there
it.
You go.
This is one where like it's so open for that sort of thing. But
it is interesting
it's more important to do something that creatively interests you.
Yeah, there's starting to be that real kind of shift. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom, I think people assumed just because there had been a bit of DLC in the last one that they'd end up doing it for that, and he was just like, "No, we just put it all in there. There's nothing left on the whiteboard."
There was an interview with someone for that as well, being like, "I don't think people understand how much we changed how that game worked from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom as well," which was kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a shame in terms of like I'd have loved to have played even more of that game. Yeah, but totally respect and accept that they're doing what they want to do.
That's very big of you.
Thank you. I'm not going to send my usual hate mail to them. No threats coming from me. I actually happen to have grown.
I'm going to still send my yearly death threats to Sean Murray, though.
Oh, he needs to know.
Yeah. It's kind of like, we have a thing now, so...
You send him like a scary Christmas card every year.
I've played his game.
He's like, I guess I'll do another update to No Man's Sky then.
I've played his game, so we're basically friends.
Yeah.
We have a shorthand with each other. I can call him a fuckhead. He gets it. But I think it's kind of like like what you said about Mario Wonder, Adam, was like, you don't want them to do that same thing again. You want them to like go and do what led to the, you know what I mean? You kind of like short term, getting a little bit more of that game would be great. But long term, what you'd rather is like, just get going on the next thing that's going to really surprise me the way this did.
The reason those characters are so good is because they created this interesting world to flesh them out in, and they wrote stories for those characters that were satisfying over the arc of that thing. Yeah. So just having them come back and be like, hey, guess what? Astarion's a baker now, and you've got to help him on a baking quest.
Or like, here's a little griblet man who has his own story, but we didn't take 9 years to make it, so it's not as good.
Yeah.
Do something exciting, because that's what was cool about that game is they found a fresh way of doing something that's been done for a while.
Yeah.
And did it the best that it can ever be done. And I genuinely wonder what their next game will be like, because like everyone in the whole industry was like, oh, we don't even know how the fuck they did that one.
Yeah.
And then they in their own company were like, whoa, let's fucking not do that again. Oh yeah. It really like have a little something simpler maybe next.
Yeah.
A bit different.
Yeah.
Who knows? Speaking of something a bit different,
Monty Python? They were completely different.
They would have hated a logical segue like that as well.
Larian should make a game for the Playdate. That'd be a good pivot.
Oh,
Just like real. I would love massive studio. We just need a little reset.
That would be
huge budget.
probably a really good idea for them to be like, yeah, we're doing something like a little go-kart racing game next or something.
Yeah.
We'll crank this out in a few months. There you go.
Yeah.
Just
crank it out.
Just crank it out.
Just whip it out. It's easy.
Yeah.
I could do it. Just don't want to. Hey, I played Dragon's Dogma 2.
Whoa.
You heard of this game?
I've heard of this game
Now
from you telling us during the week that you were playing it.
Yeah.
So this is simpler than Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, in a way. It's also a lot more complicated in another way, where it is a bizarre game that has a lot of people up in arms.
Wow.
They've like, what is that?
What does that mean? Up in
like
arms?
swords, I suppose.
Ah.
In your arms, not like you've been picked up and you're like,
Right.
put me down. I'm furious and I'm up in arms.
I hate this. I mean, I would hate that, so I relate to that
Sure.
usage more than the swords.
It would weirdly be a put down.
Yeah.
For someone to pick you up. So a lot of people got mad at this game during the week for reasons that do make sense, but
that's right.
Dodgy monetization.
It's the same shit that Capcom have been doing for a while with their single player games, but for whatever reason, this one was a lot more immediately egregious to people, and also a little misrepresented by some of the reporting on it, I do feel.
I think this is the one that's a bit easier to not so much take out of context, but you see a screenshot of $2 to fast travel,
Yeah.
$2 to redesign your player character.
Yeah.
Like you just see a screenshot of that if you haven't interacted with the game, and it really looks very bad.
I also think the reason there was a bit of like a spike of negativity is because that was not in the games for reviewers. So that was something that came online, like often storefronts and shit do.
Yeah.
They wait until they release.
This is
Same
what makes
exact thing
people-
happened with Resident Evil 4 last year.
Right.
And
Reviews come out, big raves, 8s, 9s, 10s across the board, and then that drops, and people kind of feel like the combo of if the reviewers had an inkling that this was in there, and this thing has gotten glowing praise when
Which,
it's got
to be
these sort
fair,
of flaws with it.
it was in the review packets that they were given. People just didn't read them because those things are often...
Right.
Just I'm going to play it, so why would I? Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yes, and I agree that it's like it's just obviously just gross penny trying to get. It's
Money grabbing?
Yeah, money grabbing.
Not penny pinching.
Penny pinching, that's the opposite. You'd be penny pinching by not getting. You'd be sensible to not get it because what's on offer is in-game items that you already readily get. The problem is that they're attached to things in the design of the game that sound crazy, and in some ways are. Where like you have a thing called a ferry stone that is your fast travel, one of the options, and it's a consumable item that lets you fast travel.
Yep.
In the game, it's built around that because the game wants you to
Explore.
run around.
Yep.
So that's not to excuse charging for that. I'm just saying you won't be missing out on shit if you are not buying any of this, and don't do it.
Yeah.
You don't need to. And
I guess,
you won't
yeah.
be
And you
held.
shouldn't. Yeah.
Anything that's a quality of life thing, and again, it's not, even if it's like doesn't really impact this game too much, just the precedent that it starts to establish
hate
of
the
like
way they're doing
having an easy mode that costs an extra $20 or like any of those like quality of life things, like paying for a higher tier weapon or a costume or a cosmetic
mount or
thing
something,
is like fine, but a little thing like it. I mean, it's getting into real Candy Crush territory of like pay $10 for 5 extra lives or
And
whatever.
Even those things only appear fine through attrition to us now as
Yeah,
well, where
yeah.
like they weren't for ages,
Yeah.
and then they were just done enough, and people kind of bought the line of like, well, it's all extra stuff, it's all cosmetic, but like it would have been in the game in the past. Like you used to have costumes in the games.
Yeah,
it used
So-
to be unlockable through gameplay.
And people got less and less mad at it over time, as like the horse armor thing in Oblivion was the first time I remember people being like, excuse me, I beg your pardon. And then that seems quaint in comparison now.
Totally.
Yeah.
So these things suck, but don't be scared that they have ruined the game by doing this, because I'm not of the opinion that that's the case. However, there are problems with the design of that game that these items overlap with, that I think is part of the issue too. But Resident Evil 4 had the same stuff, and it is still bad, but I'm just saying don't worry too much. But so like the stuff of changing your character's appearance is like an item that you buy and do it. The reason that that's partly annoying to people is that this game only has one save file currently, and they said they're going to patch this.
Yeah.
You can't restart the game. You
Right.
can't start a new game. You can't have a second person start their own file.
That's-
just really, really base, simple stuff.
Animal
that, like-
Crossing
Well,
level
it is
of
like
stuff.
Animal Crossing,
Yeah.
which
right.
like, you know, the saves for that were weird. The saves for that are very weird because you can like download. Do you know you can download Osama bin Laden's Animal Crossing save file
I did not
off
know
of
that.
like the CIA's repository?
Oh wow.
It's like Public Information Act shit. So you
Wow.
can download. It's really. He had a DS. A second screen
I
has
re-
hit the Game Boy.
Oh my god! I do remember that day that the contents of his hard drive were published, and he
Yes.
was like had all these Fire Emblem ROMs and stuff.
Had pirated versions of Final Fantasy VII. and
that was
shit
the
like
one I remember.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I'm gonna download Bin Laden's save file and give it over to Lauren and just let her run loose and then
Let
be
her
like,
figure it out.
"You having a good time?
Yeah.
Guess whose compound you're running around in?"
Very, very weird world that we live in. A wild world, some might call it. That was the version of Animal Crossing on the
Sick,
DS.
sad world.
But so, yes, the Pokemon games and stuff like that on the Nintendo things are similar. But even then, you can delete the save file and start again if you want to. You can't really do
it
that
won't
easily.
even let you delete
no,
it.
It's crazy. It's
That's-
really, really weird.
That I kind of like it. It's pretty funny.
No, you've made your bed. Now lie in it.
so
So
much-
it's such a weird decision.
Yeah.
So much about this game is with that sort of attitude of like, well, you fucked it.
Fuck
Right.
you.
People die and then they go to like a morgue in the city. This is like NPCs, and you can revive them with a limited wake stone, which one of the other items that you can buy.
Uh-huh.
But
I heard something about how it's like quite buggy to the point where like just through like a weird bug with the
Yeah.
game, like people's entire towns or whatever like dying.
There's tons of shit
Oh,
like
wow.
that. I
Yeah.
got back to the city the other day and there were wolves in there, and I don't think they were meant to be, and no one was really reacting to them properly.
Right.
So
Right.
But I killed the wolves and they weren't a big of a deal. But
Yeah, my copy has this weird bug where all the townspeople are telling me I've got the littlest penis they've ever seen, and that surely can't be meant to be happening.
Yeah, this is the first game where they actually implemented AI that knows the size of your dick. So it's got a lot of. It's a very quirky game.
Right.
It is very. It has its own thing that it's doing, and one of those ones that's sort of designed around what it wants to do rather than any sort of like, oh well, this is how people have figured out how to make games.
Right.
It's a gone back to the drawing board type of thing, which works both in its favor in some ways and against it in other ways. So it is an open world, combat focused adventure action game type of thing, an RPG type of guy. You start off, you make your person, you better fucking get it right.
Yeah.
no
wow.
pressure.
You can change it later at a hairdresser, and it's a limited item, but you can buy them.
Okay.
Like you can change how you look.
Just know if you make handsome Squidward, it is going to cost you
So then
to
you
change him back.
you make a pawn as well.
Oh.
You don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah. My dad wrote one of those.
PAWN. So get your minds out of the gutter and into the chess room.
My dad fucked a chessboard.
It's a great podcast. My dad played chess.
They could make pornos about that. I'm sure there's a butt plug
Yeah.
chess porno by now.
Oh yeah,
Of course.
So they're your helper. You have 3 of them at all times. One that's your main one that you've made.
Yep.
Oh, you don't have to have them at all times, but you can hire up to 3 of them, including your main one, and then 2 others, which the primary way that you get these is by other people's main ones that they've made come into your world and walk up to you in the middle of nowhere and go, I am loyal and I like to collect items.
Hell
And
yeah.
then you can either choose to hire them or not. Sort of like Animal Crossing villages a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
They'll
yeah.
just show up and be like, "Wah, wah, wah, wah."
But they're but
Yeah.
they're like other actual players' ones through the internet.
There are some that are pre-made by Capcom that
Right.
will fill it out when you don't have those, but then the majority of them are other people's legit internet ones.
That's
and it
cool.
automatically uploads your one to the server.
Right.
When you've made yours, it's in the pool.
Yeah,
Is it
that's
a
cool.
thing where you can just download the character creator
Yes.
as well? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can.
That's pretty cool.
And they put that out early so you could sort of get
That's
all that
right.
done and be ready to just
And you
dive
could
in.
make multiple characters in that, but then only take one of them into your save. It is weirdly made, and they've already said they're going to fix that. So it is people going like, "This is dumb," and they're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Game of the year, Dragon's Dogma 2. Let me finish. Character creator. Not the actual game.
No.
Just sitting there and making weird little cunnies for hours on end.
So these guys mean that you have a party of 4, not quite the show.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Who got left out? Matthew Fox?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to name Jessica Biel.
Scott Wolf?
She was Seventh Heaven.
Yeah.
That's way too many pawns. And so you're this little fighting group. You can have there's a bunch of different classes that either you can be or they can be. Fighter, mage, thief.
Oh, yeah.
Are you getting the picture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like
Barbarian?
super fighter. I think warrior is,
Okay.
and ones that are sort of advanced and maybe a bit weird and different. You're leveling up. You're getting more skills. You're buying them with points. You're attaching them to the face buttons. If you hold L1 and push a button, then you're doing your skill.
This is classic stuff.
It's really fun.
Yeah, nice.
It feels so weighty and it feels so like physical. The fights are so like punchy and like tough feeling in a similar way to something like Monster Hunter, but even more just you're in this world and you're fucking throwing your sword around. It really feels like there's some solidness to it. On top of the sort of sometimes awkward interactions of the AI. Ever heard of it? And stuff like that. That
Artificial intelligence.
can make for it
Filmed
being
by Steven Spielberg, right?
partly.
Yeah.
Those interactions are like emergent combat things. As an example, you could be fighting a golem on top of a cliff. A fucking griffin also lives on this cliff and he's flown down now and is attacking you. But then the cool thing is you climb up on the back of this griffin.
What?
And you punch it and it goes... and you're climbing around on the bigger monsters to get up to their weak points up on their necks. And
I saw a thing on Twitter of like a big troll thing, and it
Pussies and cracks.
and you're standing on the other side of a cliff face, and it kind of falls over, and it's like making a bridge across the cliff face.
Yeah.
And the player kind of like runs over its back and then just starts smashing it on the back of the ankle, and then it falls into the cliff. And I was like, this game looks pretty good.
It's really cool. If you're on the back of a griffin and you're kind of beating it, and then it's like, all right, fuck you, flies way up into the air with you on its back, holding on, your stamina going down, which, you know, it's your grip strength as well. And you're like, well, you fucking got me, brother.
Yeah.
Snookered.
Now, is this a thing where like the dragon's dog, like this?
But then you fall and one of your pawns catches you.
Oh!
It's the best feeling in the world.
Wow.
Okay,
They
that's
are
cool.
so supportive of you at all times. They're like, Master, that is an incredible choice you've just made.
Hell yeah.
Well done. Expertly executed. And even if you have ones, they've got sort of different personalities. And even the sarcastic ones are like, looking in a chest again, are you? Well, we probably should. Like,
It's not an honor to serve. Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this now, this being Dragon's Dogma 2, is this like an Alan Wake 2 sort of situation where it's really heavily following on, or is it more of a thing where it's just like a Final Fantasy, like a complete reset?
My understanding of it, having not played the first one, is that it's almost like a remake.
That's
Yeah,
what
okay.
I've heard. And is it true? I put to you that most of the time, like, it's just calling itself Dragon's Dogma.
On the title screen, it says Dragon's Dogma, but it isn't talking about itself very often. It's very humble.
Okay.
But
Characters in the game aren't going, boy, I love being inside this game of Dragon's Dogma 1.
the dragon is
Right.
back. And
Right.
he's got more dogma than ever.
I do love that title screen not having the 2 on it. Like
The way the
just sitting there being like,
developers
did I buy the wrong fucking game?
Yeah.
The way the developers have talked about it in the lead up to is like, oh, we're getting to make the thing we wanted to make because we couldn't make it years ago.
Yeah.
Cool.
And guess what? They still can't.
Right.
So it runs fucking really badly. It's like
What are you playing it on?
the PS5.
Okay.
And it runs like a PS3 game would.
Yeah.
Remember, they were just like sluggish and like a much lower normal frame rate.
Well, this is like exactly what I was talking about, where they're like, oh, we're getting to make the game we wanted to make, when they're imagining the hardware that's available now. But now they're on the hardware that's available now. They're not going, oh, we'll just do what we wanted to do 10 years ago. It's
Yeah.
like, no, we got to do...
We've still got imagination.
We got to push it. Yeah, we want to go further.
And it
Yeah.
runs poorly on high-end PCs.
Yeah,
as well, and
right.
all that sort of stuff. A lot of why seems to be because every single individual actor in this world, being, you know, the townspeople, the enemies, everything, they're all independently controlled and they're all thinking for themselves and everything, which like cool in concept. In practice, it means the game can't really draw them in until you're quite close to them. So you walk around town and people like, "Bleh," and they like kind of pop into the screen and then like wake up a little bit. They'll have this moment where they're like, oh, I should go to the shop. And it looks funny, but
that probably is what I look like walking down the street with my ADD brain. Like, how the fuck am I out of the house? What am I meant to be doing?
It's
the
a whole
groceries.
city full of those people. Who are like, oh, right, I'm the ox cart driver. But the way in which that benefits the game is that you do have these moments of combat where, like, so one of the fast travel systems is getting in an ox cart and dozing off while it gets to the other town. But then sometimes you'll get woken up in the middle of your trip and they'll be like, uh-oh, a cyclops.
Right.
Watch out. And you'll
cool.
have to get out and fight the thing and it'll smash the ox cart and kill the ox. Then those guys are dead. Unless you want to go and revive them in the crypt or whatever, that ox cart doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
The Cyclops got him, but you got to fight the Cyclops. So all of that stuff is like, it's very, it's not super hard, but it's very permanent feeling.
Right.
It feels like the things you're doing have an impact, which is a cool feeling. Like the whole game is built around that tone.
Right.
Where like, if you don't go and do this quest right now, the person who you're having to save in the quest will obviously die because they're in a harpy's nest or whatever. So, of course, they're going to get eaten.
And that is such a rare thing in games. Like, I remember being a teenager and being like, oh, imagine a game where, like, when you die, you actually, you know, like, there's so...
Yeah.
Nearly every game is like, you kill everyone in a room, you leave the room, you go back in, the enemies are all back. Like, that idea of, like, this world... What you do in this world has a sense of permanence to it.
Yeah.
Right.
That is the thing that, like, technologically is like developers don't really seem to want to tackle too much, because that is just this like very video gamey suspension of disbelief that's like, no, this has to be here.
Which this still does have a lot of that
Right.
too. It's still very gamey where like if I think after a while, like if a bridge is destroyed, it'll kind of get rebuilt in a week or
Right.
whatever. It'll be like, oh, someone might have done
But
it.
hey,
in
that can happen.
Or like, hey,
Yeah.
someone else went to the crypt and revived this character because we wanted to just repopulate the ox carts, so
Right.
you didn't hate the game.
And then,
Yeah.
like, there are, like, the Bethesda games are, like, pretty famously, like, yeah, everything has, like, its own permanent piece of code that is, like, if you move that apple, then when you go back to that room, the apple will have been moved. It doesn't mean the game is necessarily better, but, like,
It feels more lived in and
Yeah.
believable. But also that does put a lot of strain on, like, the game having to remember.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have that Blood Moon thing. It's to, like,
Yeah.
reset everything, because
Right.
the game struggles to keep tabs on this entire world and, like, what you've done to it.
This
Right.
is that same school of thought of just like, well, we should make everything stick in place and everything should have happened always.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
which is good, like, especially for, like, a role-playing game that you really get into.
Yeah. It's cool. I think the role-playing aspect of it and the story part of it is one of the weaker elements of the game, though. Like, you know, I've done a fair bit of the sort of main story stuff, and it's a bit of like, oh, well, the false king is da-da-da, and you're actually the real king, and we love you, Arisen. Everyone who is working for you, they love you.
I'm picturing Adam sitting down to play this, and he's got a little crown on his head, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not really vibing the story all that much. It's a little, it's a little tedious." And then he goes home and puts on his robe.
It's all very you know, medieval English sort of style of writing as well, where they're like, is there aught to do? They say the word ought all the time, like it just means something, I guess. As in, it means the word something, not it means something. My friend Who is playing first base.
Well, but I mean, both are true.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
means something, and it means something.
um,
The Japanese take on medieval English, I love.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that filtration system of.
It's the English take on it that's bothering me, where like some of the voice acting is pretty. There's a lot of different voices in it. It seems like, and you know, every character I come across, they don't have noticeably similar voices.
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
very
Yeah.
least.
Okay.
But it does mean that I'm getting the impression they were all reading their lines in a fairly short amount of time, because people will have wildly different interpretations of the same. Like a lot of people have been talking about. I forget the specifics. I forget individual examples, but I don't think they help to prove a point.
You just take it on sort of faith.
Like the word air
Oh yeah, you mentioned that one to us.
Apostrophe ER
Yep.
forever.
Yes.
One line reading, the guy was like, and you know this guy, he's the optimist. Just read it as though it was And that was
right.
really funny to me.
You mentioned this in
Yeah.
our chat, and you were like, get a load of this for a weird line read. This is what it's meant to say. And then what I thought we were going to get was an audio recording from the actual game. And what it was you speaking the line into your phone.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this voice actor really sounds a lot like Adam.
So yeah, all of that sort of stuff is up and down. But
This is like a AA game though, right? This isn't a massive game.
it's Capcom. It's a big.
Yeah.
It's a big game.
That's true. That's there is a reasonable.
And this was
budget.
like when we were, this has just come out. And so when we were in Japan, this was getting, a lot of the stores that you'd walk past had like a big, like commonly there, like an electronics store, they'll have like a big TV out the front, like really blasting you with stuff for this game. So they were selling it pretty hard.
Yeah, and it's like an advanced game. Like it looks good when it runs poorly, but it looks nice. And
just like me.
The main meat and potatoes of the actual fighting in this game, though, is so fun.
Right.
And you're doing a hell of a lot of it, often against the same enemies over and over.
Okay.
Because like when you're walking from A to B, there's a ton of fucking baddies along the way. You're
Out in the wilderness.
They're living there.
What kind of
And
baddies we talking?
We're talking goblins. We're talking harpies. We're talking wolves. We're talking minotaurs. We're talking that sort of,
It's how I feel when I walk in to do this in the summer. Baddies everywhere. Nothing but baddies.
It's one of those.
Not to give away the location of where we record.
Well, I think
but
that's.
there's a lot of baddies around here.
I think that's way too specific.
Do you know as well that baddies is slang for hot girl?
Oh, yes.
Because that's what I thought you meant at first.
No, it is what I meant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's what I continue to mean.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant villains.
Yeah.
Because there are some villains
Well,
as
there
well.
are some villains,
Yeah.
but yeah, mostly.
Mostly
The
bomb-ass babes.
that part of it is super fun.
Right.
Fighting people out there, you're having a good time. I've been playing as a fighter class for the whole time so far, and I'm just leveling that one up right now because I'm enjoying having that with like a mage to heal you and do some fire attacks or whatever sometimes. Get an archer to shoot things up high in the sky, and then a thief as well who can run around and get people real quick. It's a good combo. A classic Final Fantasy 1 style combo.
Yeah.
But it just feels really unique and cool and very engaging, the combat. It's like it's just on the right tip of being demanding versus feeling like you've got some power over it. You're having to like camp and rest and reset because as you take damage, your overall amount of health will go down with that.
Sure.
So you're like forced to take breaks, and overnight the world will become a lot more dangerous. So it's good to set up camp, cook some food to give you buffs for the next day, and then it's got these weird inserts of like just real life cooking. They've just filmed throwing some steaks onto like
That's great.
camping camping pots.
See, this is like
What a weird game.
It's really weird the whole way through.
This is what is such a shame about these business decisions that companies make about this like monetization stuff without really thinking about like, I don't know if it's that they're unaware or that they just don't care.
They've gotten away with literally this exact type of monetization as well for a long time. Monster Hunter had it. Resident Evil 4 had this exact same thing of like coin bonus A, coin bonus B, coin bonus C in the shops. And this is the same thing that this is doing.
But this is the shame is that then becomes the headline. And you see this with a lot of games. That becomes the overall headline and it detracts from what the actual story should be, which is that they've made this like cool, quirky, weird game that's a lot of fun, but people just get hung up on and then obviously, not that this is necessarily their fault, but then people get into the review bombing and it like, all this stuff just ends up kind of tarnishing the overall, like what the narrative of this game coming out should be.
And look, this has had the 1-2 punch of having the egregious monetization and the bad performance, which are two things that people do view as just like, that's crossing a line that I don't respect. Like,
Yeah.
That's the I'm not buying this game kind of
I
line.
mean, bad performance
And
is
it
like
makes-
people tend to go, oh, yeah, I'm going to wait for a few months until it's patched. But I feel like people are more inclined with the monetization stuff to be like, I'm going to really make a point here.
Yeah, but I also think those people say that, but then end up buying the game.
And
anyway.
also, probably enough people buy it and do engage with buying the fast travel item and whatever that it does.
That's the gamble they're making,
worthwhile,
right?
Yeah.
To review a game on Steam, you have to have bought it. So if it's getting review bombed on Steam, you can refund a game within 2 hours or whatever, but
I think the reviews also say if you've done that, right?
they say the amount of hours played.
Right.
Maybe it says they return it. I don't know. But so, they're legitimate gripes with the game that I also share, but I don't want the reporting of it to misrepresent the
it's easily avoidable.
It's not as severe as it maybe seems on the face of it to your actual enjoyment of the game, but it is still just like grubby corporate shitty what items in this game can we also sell?
It should still be discouraged, but it's
very bad.
Yeah,
but you can ignore it, but it shouldn't happen anyway.
It's a weird double-edged sword where like the fact that you can ignore it completely in the game speaks to the fact that it shouldn't be there at all.
Yeah.
Which then it's like, well, so what? You're saying that the argument is like if it's going to be in there, it should be absolutely necessary. You know, it's like it is a bit of a, but yeah.
It's just yuck. But it's as yuck as, you know, the fucking worm cup from June or whatever. It's like, this is nothing to do with the movie. Why the fuck are you selling me this? But it's worse than that because it's not as valuable as a horny cup.
But you're right in the way that things get completely normalized. Like, you know, back in the 80s when they were like, oh, we're going to make a new version of the Nintendo Entertainment System that none of your old games will work on.
Yeah.
People at the time were like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
I spent a few $100 on this thing and now I have to get are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like that, you know, that was a thing that people were up in arms about.
And maybe they were right all along.
Yeah.
They probably were.
So if you're looking for a like very a strong-willed, strong personality sort of game,
right? A unique take on a traditional genre.
You might not vibe with it, but if you do, it's something that kind of isn't being done in this same way by anyone else. Like the type of combat feels a bit like sort of a Monster Hunter cross with like a slow action game like a Bayonetta or whatever. It's nothing to that sort of scale, but that type of and a little kind of Soulsy, and like the different classes and weapons make a pretty big impact, and the different skills do change how you're playing it quite a lot. And that stuff is really like solid and fun, and it's been so like it's threatening to walk around the world and to explore it, and the reward for doing it is in that combat that is it's so cool to climb on top of a big thing, of a dragon, for example. A very dogmatic dragon might show up and you're like, hey, get with the times, brother.
Loosen up.
And fighting this thing and it flying around and you're having to climb on it and it knocking over all of your people. You're having to revive. Like, that shit is great.
Oh, yeah, cool.
You only control one character?
You're just one guy. The rest of them are all doing their own
thing. They're all AI.
But you can, well, as scary as it might be, that is what they are. But
they're helping you.
You're choosing what classes and what sort of personalities, and you can give them some abilities and
right.
And that sort of stuff is great, like going through and like switching them up. And, you know, you travel with them for a couple of weeks and you're like, wow, I've outgrown you.
Yeah.
Got to see you off. Because the ones who aren't your main pawn won't level up. So you've kind of got to refresh that pool every so often. And, you know, then your person, after you sleep, sometimes will come back and be like, I just had a fucking adventure off with someone else.
Yeah.
Learned a couple of things, and then they might learn where the location of like a chest is and go, I actually saw
it's
a
below
chest
the neck
here in another world. So,
wow, this AI, it's so there's nothing it can't do. It'll cure cancer one day.
All of those ideas are so cool.
Yeah, that's very creative.
They work really well. All of the quests are like maybe a little by the numbersy in some ways, where they're like, oh, I sure wish I could find this thing. But then the journey to go and get it has so much fun combat along the way that does feel like it is emerging in that, you know, it's not a planned thing for this griffin to show up, but it's gonna.
Yeah.
And then you dealing with it is super fun and changes quite significantly. It appears, even though I've just been playing as a fighter, but I've had a bunch of the other pawns be the other classes, and it changes up what you can do pretty significantly. So all of that part of it is super cool. And if you are into it, then yeah, you're going to get it out of this game in a way that you kind of can't in exactly the same formula somewhere else.
Cool.
But technically a mess, so don't be in a rush. They are going to patch it.
Yeah,
Right.
hold off maybe.
It's probably worth giving it a minute or two to bake a little further. But if it appeals to you, then it probably is something that you'll end up appreciating your time with.
Right.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
Well, what I've been doing this week,
Did anyone ask?
No. Now that you mention it, no, they didn't.
Give us the opportunity. Tommy, I'd love to know what you were doing this week.
I'm going to leave the room because I could not give a shit.
I took I decided to give a hard pass to Princess Peach Showtime. Played the demo and seems competent enough. It is for babies.
Yep.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I've enjoyed.
It's a weird... The Rugrats.
Yeah.
That's babies.
Yeah.
They made it specifically for Chucky Finster. I have enjoyed my time with your Kirby's, and I talked about that game Euphoria to the Saga last week. But this one, just not really like design-wise doing it enough for me to be like, oh, I'm enjoying just kind of, playing through this.
Right. This is, from the makers of Kirby's Epic Yarn and Yoshi's Woolly World and all of that stuff.
Which I have really liked all their other games. This, I mean, it really is, the Switch showing its age, even with something that is not, you would think not technically very demanding. It just looks very rough around the edges, and yeah, it's fine. I could see, it's a great little kids game. It's a great first game.
They've really positioned this one the whole time. They've
Yes.
shown it off as well. It's like, this is for children. We
Right.
mean it this time.
Yeah.
Even like the Kirby games, they'll be easy, but then they'll be like the final worlds will get kind of dark and like weirdly intense and like full-on anime mech kind of weird stuff will happen like in the final bits of your Kirby's.
Yeah, and they'll chuck in a hard boss or two in a Kirby game that's not like literally for children, but
Yeah, and this is like a kind of a similar thing where you're going through these different rooms, getting these different costumes that have different abilities, and I just kind of found it a little slow, but it would be a great one to sit and play through with a child.
Did they chuck one out last year at some point that we kind of went, oh, this one's actually for kids? What am I thinking of?
I mean, they did Return to... What was it? Return to Dreamland Deluxe?
Yeah, there was that Kirby.
Not that one.
But that one was probably, didn't
Mario
really...
and Donkey Kong, maybe?
Towards the back end of last year, somewhere in that back half, I remember being like, oh, this one's actually for kids. Oh, it was Detective Pikachu 2. That's what
yeah.
Right.
Glad we got to the bottom of that mystery, Detective Pikachu.
Everyone was going to go out and not buy any Nintendo games until they found out.
Yeah.
But thank God.
But I've been going back through some old games in the catalogue. I picked up Kid Icarus Uprising on the 3DS. I played it a bit back in the day and went back to that. It's cool. It's an on-rails shooter. It's a cool...
Shooter! Shooter! Jurassic Park.
Hell yeah.
Didn't get it.
First person shooter!
Is it a first?
yeah.
Is it like a point blank, like shoot 'em, time crisis thingy?
Third person,
yeah.
you're flying around, and then you sort of got bits where you're on the ground. It's like each level's kind of divided into 2 bits.
Right.
But it's cool. It's like Nintendo in the 3DS era, they really got into some areas that I love when they get into where they're just like, hey, this thing that we haven't touched in 20 years, here's just randomly a new one of this. I'd love to see them start doing, because it's a good game. I feel like people got really hung up on the control scheme. So you're using your control pad to fly around, and then you had to use the touch screen and the stylus to aim with.
Right.
And I just feel like that was the thing that got so much attention when it came out. And it also... You could buy this attachment, like that was a second before they made the new 3DS that had a second stick.
Right.
So much of the narrative around the game when it came out was this like weird control style that
especially at that time people were sick of like touch controls and their implementation on like phones and stuff like that. Especially people really off.
And for a handheld,
touch.
it just meant that you couldn't. You kind of had to be sort of sitting at a desk
Oh,
almost
yeah.
to kind of hold it in one hand and then be using the...
Right.
I think they even put out like a little stand that you could sit it on to use
So many
the-
peripherals
I
for this
know.
game.
And that was
for the massive Kid Icarus return.
I mean, all the stuff about all the actual like qualities of the game got lost in the whole
Right.
narrative of all that stuff around it, because it's made by the guy who makes Smash Brothers. It was his kind of pet project thing, I think. But it's cool. It I don't know. I feel like every now and then it comes up, like especially throughout the life of the Switch, it was like, hey, what about a remake of this where you just use the two sticks, and
Right.
for whatever reason I don't know. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. But maybe a new one.
Is it sort of like Panzer Dragoon?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Are you doing 3D like that as well? Like looking to your left and right, or it's kind of all in front of you, Panzer
It's
Dragoon?
all the camera is like fixed, so you can't sort of choose your path. You can just choose where you sit on the screen,
reticle.
and where the reticle is. So
Yeah,
you've got
okay.
so you're moving Pit, and you're also moving the aim thing, and you've got like
Is his name not Kid Icarus?
No,
No.
it's Pit.
it's Pit.
All right.
You didn't know that?
Yeah, I guess I knew that from Smash
Yeah.
Brothers, but it's
Yeah.
just a weird thing to remember.
Yeah, Pit. P-I-T-T.
All right.
So you're holding down the L trigger to shoot, or if you can build up a charge if you take your finger off it. And so it's like it is pretty simplistic controls, because you've only got, assuming that you're holding the stylus in your other hand, you've only got that like one finger. So it does kind of work well in that sense, that it's like a pretty simplistic control style, but it's fun. It's very like there's just constant. I think maybe this is another thing that some people didn't like about it at the time. All of the story and what's happening is delivered to you while you're playing the game. So on the bottom screen, you've got this blocks of text and little sort of, Persona style, just static images of what character is talking. But all the dialogue stuff is just kind of happening at you while you're playing the game, which is a little kind of hard to can be a bit hard to take in.
Yeah.
But it also
This
does.
is like 10 years prior to TikTok videos as well.
Yeah.
They really figured out, like,
Yeah.
no, we need the castle, whatever, running down the bottom.
Yeah.
And then you're watching the Kid
Man,
Icarus
that's
version of Family Guy up the top.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder how. Yeah, it probably does register. Like if you put it in front of a 22-year-old, they'd probably love it.
Yeah.
Get ready with me while I shoot all of these guys down on the bottom screen.
And then there's someone playing with slime off to the side as well.
Someone like hydraulic press crushing
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
Nintendo characters.
But it is very like it. I think people kind of responded a bit negatively to it at the time because it felt very busy. But playing it now, especially for something that is just like a purely handheld game, it does make it feel kind of like weirdly like robust.
Right.
Like the fact that it does make it feel like a very impressive full-bodied game, like like there is so much going on all at the one time that does make it feel, because the you have such limited controls at your disposal. Like you really are just holding like one button to shoot and that's it.
Yeah.
So it does make it feel like there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Because there kind of is. But I'm really enjoying revisiting it. I liked it at the time.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I remember people saying about it at the time, was that thing that you kind of mentioned before of like, there's a good game trapped in here.
Yeah.
Right. That's difficult to get to because of the awkward controls.
Yeah, and I
Sounds like
feel
the
like-
developers flew a bit too close to the sun.
Yeah, like that story about Pit.
I could see them taking another pass at this on a Switch 2 with like nice graphics, just normal control scheme, and have all this stuff be sort of like separated out.
Well,
And
they've got to have some remasters on the Switch too. Like
Yeah.
they've already done a bunch for the Switch.
I feel like they probably wouldn't even bother remastering this because they would have to, because
Well,
of
that's
the
what
dual
they're doing
screen
now.
nature of it.
Luigi's Mansion 2 is a 3DS
Oh, that's true.
game they're just sort of chucking back out.
right.
Maybe you'll get your wish.
Maybe I
Yeah.
will get my wish. Well, my wish would just be like a sequel to this, but anyway.
Well, have realistic wishes.
Yeah.
The genie's not a magician.
Yeah. I've also been playing a bit of Elite Beat Agents on the DS.
Hell
What
yeah.
was Elite Beat Agents?
Elite Beat Agents is a touchscreen rhythm game.
Oh.
You're doing like you're tapping stuff on the bottom screen with the stylus and sort of in time to the music, and then there'll be things where you've got to like grab, like drag the stylus along in time with the little ball that's going along and
It's a
spin
team
a
of,
thing
like,
around.
superhero cheerleaders, right?
Yeah, they're like kind of a
by cheering.
secret agency thing, and it'll be like this girl wants to ask her boyfriend to go steady, but he's not paying attention to her. Help me, Elite Beat Agents, and then you come in and sing Skater Boy.
Yeah,
And
I was going to say Skater Boy.
Skater Boy is like the second level in it. And I was
Great.
like, this is really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, fun game.
That specific form of rhythm game reminds me of, no spoilers, one in Final Fantasy Rebirth.
Yeah.
Right?
It is that.
Yeah, great.
Which were, there were a few, like, arcade ones, I guess, that this sort of thing came out of.
Yep.
Because I think there's a few of them in Japan, Osu something or Wendon or something like that. A few more Elite Beat Agents games, but just...
Even just like the whole thing of it being a touchscrame rhythm game, and it came out around the era of the Guitar Hero and so kind of going, well, we've got these games where you're actually playing the instruments. I remember seeing it at the time and never engaging with it because it seemed like, well, why would this be fun? Just tapping a pen on a screen in time with the music when we're deep in the era of I'm actually playing drums or
Guitar Hero DS like had a thing you plugged into the Game Boy Advance port that was 4 buttons.
Oh, really?
And you'd hold the DS on the side. I think it came with a wrist strap as well, and like play it more like the accordion than a guitar.
Weird Al Simulator. That would be cool.
Oh man, I'd love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, really enjoying that.
Doing a bunch of parody songs of like, I'm a little plumber.
Yeah.
I am stupid and I'm dumb. I don't know what his songs are like these days.
Well, I mean, speaking of Weird Al, I think there's a case to be made that his song Word Crimes, which is his parody of Blurred Lines, the cancelled song, Word Crimes should just become the actual version of that song.
Yeah.
Because the backing track's great.
Yep.
It's catchy as hell.
Yep.
The lyrics of the original one are so dodgy and it will never be played in public ever again. So we just, you're at a wedding, you drop Word Crimes, people are like, yeah, okay, this is a bop. He's singing about grammar.
Very funny that even then Weird Al was like, I think this song should be about crime.
He knew in the back of his head. And I've also been playing a SNES game that I bought in Japan. But I've been playing it emulated. It's a game that never came out in the West called Mario and Wario. It was one of the few, maybe one of only 2 games to use the SNES mouse.
Oh, nice.
I think.
Yeah.
I think it never came out in the West because, they just were like, the people aren't buying this fucking mouse. What were we thinking?
No one wants to Mario Paint.
But
I did.
Works great on an emulator. Use the computer mouse as a... I thought there was maybe going to be a bit of tooling around to get it to work, but you just click a button and just straight away.
Nice.
So the setup of the game is Wario, that dastardly fella. He's dropped a bucket on Mario's head.
Oh no!
Mario can't see.
He's always got a scheme.
He's always got a little scam, and so it's like Mario's kind of walking along, and you're with the mouse. You're controlling a little fairy that's going around and hitting switches, filling in blocks that don't exist, and making a little path to guide Mario to the end. Cool. And there's like
nice.
The Magurio.
Yeah. There's 10 worlds, 10 levels in each, so there's a lot in it. And it was made by the director of the Pokemon games, the first Pokemon games. I think it might have been the first thing he did after that, maybe. But it's cool. It's really, really good. And it weirdly, it's all in... So it never came out outside of Japan, but it's all in English. So I think they were planning to bring it out, and then they just were like, this... No one owns this. And like, it would be impossible to play with a controller, so there's no way they could have patched that in. But... It's worth tracking down because it's a fun little game.
Head over to Japan, get that secondhand copy.
Yep, and then download a ROM of it.
Yeah,
easy peasy.
Otherwise you'll go to jail.
And stare at the boxed copy. It is really nice to fire up a ROM and just be looking at the box and being like, I'm allowed to do this.
At the very worst, it's a grey area.
No wrongdoing is being committed here because I'm playing a backup of something that I own.
Yeah, that's the law.
That's the law.
As long as you're not on an oil rig.
Yeah, I played 2 games that I legitimately acquired as well as Tommy did. One of them is on the Playdate. I'm back into the Playdate after having a crack of Mars After Midnight.
Yep.
This was just one that jumped out to me on the catalog, which is their like little online store now, which... hooks up with a lot of those creators who were doing that side-loaded stuff for the itch.io, games. And the one I played this week was called Jolly Chimp Champ, and it absolutely got me on the name. Beautiful name for a game.
Jolly Chimp Champ.
Jolly Chimp Champ. And this is a puzzle game. The only controller you use is the crank.
Okay.
And you're basically, each level you're looking at sort of a bird's eye view, and you have conveyor belts that are run by turning the crank. Some of them will be running opposite ways. Some of them, whatever. They all interact. And your goal is to move a little chimp man who's sitting on one at the start to a goal. And so you got to crank him along those conveyors. But there will be like obstacles. There will be like cannons shooting. So if you get hit, instant fail.
Yeah.
You'll have to... sometimes there will be a sort of like a little roundabout conveyor belt where like you get him onto that and then it stops and you continue to crank and it'll like swivel him around.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like, okay, and then once you start cranking the opposite way, he'll like go onto the whatever conveyor belt you've
Right.
like
I was going to
lined him up
ask,
with.
how do you switch your Jolly Chimp Champ between
Yeah.
different conveyor belts?
So
And he's
yeah.
actually a chimp. He's not just a regular guy.
How happy is he?
Yeah, he's a regular guy who... No, he is a chimp.
He's an actual chimp.
He's a little monkey with symbols.
Okay.
Right.
Symbols guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but it'll be like you'll be cranking him along, one way, and then he'll drop onto the next conveyor belt. But if you continue to crank the same way, maybe it'll drop him into a little hole. So it's like, okay, got to stop, reverse crank him up this way, and then there will be obstacles that will like, say. Yeah, and so every conveyor belt is turning at the same time when you turn the crank.
Yeah.
So like you'll start turning it and your chimp will be going along, but another conveyor belt might have a little brick on it that you drop onto the conveyor belt in front of the chimp. And so instead of moving the chimp all the way to the goal, if you do that normal sort of series of cranks, you'll end up putting the brick on the goal. Chimp can't get there. So you've got to be like, okay, well, I've got to crank this along, then I've got to dump this on a different conveyor belt without losing my chimp, so it's
nice.
it's that kind of philosophy of the puzzles. And yeah, some of it's timing based when there's like cannons that will like shoot every 2 seconds and you got to, sort of pace it out and stuff like that. It's very simple, but I'm like 25 levels in or something, 30 levels in, and it continues, it evolves, it throws more challenges at you, and every level, like if you do it correctly, could be done in 10 seconds.
Cool.
But it's often about finding out that correct way to get
nice.
him through.
How many levels roughly do you reckon?
I don't know. I've given it a good couple of sessions, but it's a $6 game.
Yeah, nice.
So even if
I feel like that's where the Playdate really thrives. The
Yeah.
$6 puzzle game
Absolutely.
with an interesting little...
You don't want to be looking at that thing or holding it for like much longer than the amount of time that a
Yeah.
game like that would, because it's so small and it's the black and white screen
And you need to
everything.
sit in,
Yeah.
it's got no backlight, so you need to be sitting in a really specific...
Yeah,
Yes.
you can
spot
only
in
play
your
from
house.
midday to 1 p.m. anyway. So
Well, I was like
The sun
playing...
does come up at 11:58 a.m. at the moment.
it's horrible being at the South Pole.
Yeah.
It didn't. Oh, there's a demo of it that contains 25 levels,
Oh, wow.
and the full version contains 100 levels and an unlockable speedrun mode.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
about a quarter of the way through.
Nice.
I recommend it.
Have
If
you
got a
done
Playdate.
any one of the games that is in the batch of actual games that you get on the Playdate? Have you done any Pick Pack Pup?
No, I have not.
That's probably my favorite one on there.
Okay.
Just a fun little puzzle game, little match 3 kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
But similar thing that kind of keeps sort of intensifying as it goes along. It seems like
Right.
there's a lot
Huge
in it.
platform for a silly game name.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's really the place for it.
Yeah. If you have a Playdate, and like we were saying the other week, maybe if you have a Playdate account and play on the web, you can play these games.
I didn't look up if that's possible yet.
We'll never
Update,
look it up.
folks. We still haven't looked this up. We got to check back in next week.
But also, we did say it seems like you can just buy a Playdate and they'll ship it to you straight away. So
Yeah.
if you are one of those people who always wanted to and maybe was concerned about, like the wait time or the amount of games that there were available on it, there's fucking heaps now.
I think there's enough good stuff on it to like truly recommend as a little extra if you're someone who likes collecting this stuff, likes interesting little different experiences.
Exactly.
There
You've gotta
are
be-
enough things on there that you can't, even with an account, the crank does make it feel so different.
Yeah.
You've got to be into the gimmick.
Yeah.
yeah. It's
or
a cool gimmick.
like playing Game Boys.
Yeah,
Still,
yeah. If you like
in
your little
this-
gizmos,
Yeah.
heck of a gizmo.
It's fantastic. And I also think I mentioned maybe that I had was having a battery issue. They resolved it for me. They were just like, yeah, plug it into the power and let it charge for like 24 hours.
It just sounded like the solution
Yeah.
from the start was going to be.
I was
Yeah,
waiting
mate,
for
did
this.
you,
It's like, it turns out it was my fault all along.
No, it was like they were like, yeah, this has happened before. You've got to like go through a full fucking cycle.
Yeah.
And then it'll sort of figure itself out, which it has. So that's great.
That was such a tech thing of back in the day. Like, you buy this thing and it's got 0% battery and you need to charge it for 24 hours. It was always such a bummer getting the thing out of the box and it's like, I want to fucking...
And let it fully empty before
Yeah.
you ever
Yeah.
charge it again.
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is not the case anymore.
No. And I played another game this week that was free. It's free on Steam.
Ooh.
And it's got maybe the best. We're talking about good names on the Playdate. Doronko Wanko, which means muddy dog.
Oh, a couple of dog games. It's Dog Week.
Yeah. So
Neither of them are well, that one is.
this game, it's published by Bandai Namco, and it's one of 3 that they dropped for free, I guess, yesterday or 2 days ago when this comes out. The other 2 I didn't play, but there was like sort of like a what was that? Bomb Cyberpunk Rush?
Bomb Rush
Cyberpunk, where you kind of like zooming around on little little tracks and grinding and stuff and doing stuff. But anyway, this is one of them. It's the best one in my opinion. It's you play as a little Pomeranian, and you're in a little house. It's basically reverse House Flipper or Splatoon if you were just a dog and you wanted to make everything muddy.
Okay.
That's
You got to mess up the house.
you got to mess up that goddamn house.
Okay.
There's like a birthday party happening or something, and it's like set up with these really good, very professional, like cool, fun, illustrated, little panels, like little animated, comic panels of like nice little family gonna have a big birthday party.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Here comes the dog.
The
dog.
The Doronko.
Here comes Wank Dog.
I think Wanko means dog, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that is
Hell
good.
yeah.
Wanko. I think a bunch of the family goes out. The mum's at home. She falls asleep. She's been doing all the work, obviously. She falls asleep, and then it's time for little Wanko to roll in the mud. And then it sort of has given you... There'll be like paw prints that you will see as you start to cover them with mud. They'll still sort of like start to glow. And you'll follow the paw prints to like an area, living room, whatever, which will have basically like a symbol on the ground of like the dog's face, like a little Pomeranian. And your goal is to reveal and cover these 12 of these symbols throughout the house. And so most of it is done by like, I was playing on PC, WASD moving around, right click to roll in mud, left click to shake mud everywhere. And once you've shaken some more mud around, you can go and roll in the same mud. So it's not like you have to go to some like
Just
unique mud
refilling the
spot.
mud.
You're just re-upping your mud, like Splatoon, right?
Yep.
When you dive into the ink. So
Yep.
it's exact same sort of philosophy. And then there will be bits where it's like, oh, there's a symbol on the wall, so you've got to activate this fan and then shake mud in front of the fan and it'll blow it up on the wall.
Great.
You unlock...
This sounds satisfying.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so satisfying. It is very, very short. A free game. It's like half an hour, basically.
Yep.
You're basically, going through this house, going through each of the rooms, finding these 12 symbols, covering them with mud. Some of them are hidden. Some of them are like in an area that you have to like do a incredibly simple like environmental puzzle to open that area.
Yeah.
But it's just so fun and cute and like
Cool.
it's the more like you cover the more area you cover, the more like money the cleaning bill racks up.
Yeah.
You will hit these milestones of getting like a little hat that shoots out, like a little elephant hat where the trunk shoots out like blue paint.
Yeah.
Or like a little, I don't want to ruin them all because there's like not many and
Right.
it's a free game and everyone should play it. But yeah, little things like that that sort of augment your making a mess.
This sounds really good.
It's
Yeah.
really, really fun. I don't know why it's only like a demo that goes for half an hour because it
Yeah.
should be a full game.
Is there any view that you know of to making these a full game, or are these proof of concepts for something?
Maybe that's why
later,
they've put them all out for free.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Also, the game launches in Japanese, and if you have Google Translate camera, you can go to the menu and change it to English, but it's just in Japanese by default.
Right,
That's funny.
Having said that, I played the entire game without changing the language and found that out afterwards.
Cool. Yeah.
So you really don't have to know that.
A mess is the universal language.
Yeah, and the keys and stuff, it's saying E, it's a picture of the E key, and then it'll have Japanese. So you're like, oh, I'll just try something.
I'll just push that key.
I'll just push that key.
Happens.
But like I said,
game it is.
it's WASD and right and left click, and that's it.
Cool.
And it's really charming and fun, and cute design, good visual design. It's not like just I think the other two are a bit kind of generic game looking.
Yeah, you sent us the Steam link for this, and it looks cool.
Yeah, it's got a great style, and it's just super, super fun. So if you do like Splatoon, if you do like those, the reverse of a power wash simulator, basically.
In Portal 2, when you get that white gloop one, I covered the whole place in the white gloop, though, just because, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about in the game? What about... Yeah, so give this a crack.
Cool.
Especially if you love cute dogs.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this... I'm that.
Yeah.
Me.
Cute little white dogs.
It me.
Oh.
Well, that's going to do us for another episode of Filthy Casuals. Thank you for listening. Come and see us live at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. We got our first show coming up April the 7th, and then the 14th and the 21st at the Coopers Inn, 3 p.m. on Sundays.
Yeah.
Filthycasuals.com.au. Get on the Patreon, support the show, get our bonus show every week that we do, and check out our YouTube channel. Heaps of Let's Plays and one-off videos and all that kind of stuff that we do on there. Hundreds and hundreds of videos.
Yeah.
If you want to see us playing video games. That's going to do us for this week. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time. And as we say here at the end of every installment of Filthy Casuals...
Dragon's Dogma 2. Oh, you mean Dragons Chasing Amy.